Welcome to BC Sunday Rant. This is a little bit late, but I wasn't sure I was going to do a rant today. And this is not a rant so much as it is just a couple of stories that have a life lesson. Years and years and years ago, I'm talking about, middle 80s. I had a job that I absolutely loved. Up until that point, I had never really truly enjoyed a job. It was just something I did because I had to. But I got this job at Ashland Chemical in Shreveport, and I loved the job. And the reason I loved it was because you got to do so many things that you never got bored. One day you were drumming up chemical into 55-gallon drums, and another day you were driving a flatbed, and the next day you'd be pulling a box truck with a lift gate, and the day after that you'd be working in the warehouse. It was always something different and interesting, and then they started teaching me how to do lab work, working spectrometers, and checking incoming chemical for purity and strength and stuff like that. And then, about a year and a half into me working there, I had already advanced to the highest pay, which really pissed a lot of the guys there off because it usually took 5 or 6 years. Now, they knew I did not have a high school diploma, and all my life, it's only bothered me or affected me twice, and that was one of the jobs. They were thinking about promoting me into management, and I was a pretty young guy still, 25, 26, and I was really happy. And they had made arrangements to send me to this plant manager's school in Dallas. They had gone so far as to rent me the motel room. And about a year and 9 months into this job, I was lifting 100-pound bags up on my shoulder and then climbing this ladder and dumping these 100-pound bags into this giant, there were sifters. And what you did was you dumped these 100-pound bags into this sifter, and then you rebagged them into smaller, 25-pound bags. That was another part of the job. It was just so many different things to do that you never got bored. Well, anyway, I blew a disc out in my lower back, and I knew immediately when I got up there that something was wrong, bad wrong. And sure enough, I had blown a disc out. I think it was L4. And I ended up taking 2 months off, desperate to get back to work, because workman's comp back then I think was paying $110 a week, and man, that wouldn't even pay in my rent. I was renting an apartment, and my rent was more than that, and I had 3 babies and a wife that had never worked. Well, during the 2 months that I had off, my wife decided that she no longer wanted to live with me, be married to me. So she took my 3 kids and she went to Washington State, left me with no job and not enough money to pay the rent. And what made her leave was I insisted she had to get a job, or else we were going to get kicked out of the apartment. And I said, as soon as I go back to work, whatever job you have, you can quit it. And she wouldn't do it. And rather than save us, she abandoned me. This is not the part of the story. This is not the life lesson. Well, it is, when you talk about people's character. So anyway, I ended up getting well. I ended up living in my car. And I got well enough to return to work, thinking they would be glad to have me. And boy, was I ever wrong. And I went from a guy who loved his job, was eager to get up and go to work, and when I went to bed, I was anxious for the next day. And I went back to work, and those people did everything they could to get me to quit. I went from being the star, basically, the guy that got promoted faster than anybody had ever been promoted, the guy that was making top pay faster than anybody else had ever been, sent to top pay. And now they're going to make me the plant manager at 25 years old. Not anymore. Now I've hurt my back. Everything changed. They started doing they wanted me to quit. I realized that after about a week. So what they started doing was telling me, well, we don't need you to come in till 9 o'clock tomorrow. And I would come in at 9 o'clock tomorrow and punch in, and they would write me up for coming in at 9 instead of 8, and then deny that they said come in at 9. So I only fell for that twice. And they did other things. They accused me of taking something that didn't belong to me. I think it was a box of laundry soap or some crap, some ridiculous stuff. Finally, I got the idea. I understood that this was not going to get better and that things were going to get worse until I quit, or if I could hang in there and make them fire me. But they weren't going to fire me. What they were going to do was get enough crap on me, write me up enough where I wouldn't be able to collect unemployment if they fired me. And I actually talked to the guy that was so in love with my job, the way I performed, and the guy that was responsible for pushing me through to management, even though I didn't even have a high school diploma or college, which was another first for Ashland Chemical. And he sat me down in his office. He said, Brad, I have no choice. I have people I have to answer to, and I cannot keep you on. You have to quit. I give you a couple weeks vacation and a glowing reference, but they're going to make me either fire you or make you quit. That's the bottom line, because you're now a liability, because everything we do here is heavy. So I quit. I got my 2 weeks pay, and learned a valuable lesson about being so naive as to think that if you did a good job, that's all you needed to do to feel secure and safe, was to do a good job and be faithful to your employer and show up early and leave late and work hard all day. And what a silly twit that I thought that was the truth. Here's another one. Same exact thing happened. John and John Tank Lines over in Bossier City. It was hard work, and it was some of the worst driving, which was all East Coast. But what I liked about it was you hauled the same product, and it was a very highly specialized product in a specialized tanker. So when you delivered, you always came back empty. You didn't have to hunt around for loads. You didn't have to look for a place to get your tanker steamed out. There were no backhauls. As soon as you emptied, you turned around and came back home. So you were only out 4 or 5 days. And then on top of that, that job, I won Driver of the Year my second year there. Out of, many hundreds of people. This is going to be a long video. I'm already at 8 minutes. And what do you think happened? I delivered a load to North Branford, Connecticut, Firestone in North Branford, Connecticut. Middle of winter, and it was one of the worst winters they'd had. And I had ice all over the ladder going up to the dome lid on top of my tank. And you have to climb up and open the dome lid to empty your tank, or otherwise it caves the tank in. So I was up there with a sledgehammer beating all the ice off the toggles. I call them, everybody calls them dogs in the trucking industry. Loosening the dogs that hold the dome lid closed. I got them all loosed, and then I dropped my hammer, pitched my hammer down onto the ground. I was carefully climbing down the ladder because it was covered with ice, and I slipped off of that ladder and fell smack dab on my ass. I blew out 2 discs and broke my tailbone in 3 places and drove home. And again, took about 2 months for me to get through that, get healed up, get well enough to come back to work, and the exact same thing happened. I went from being Driver of the Year, they gave me the best truck in the fleet, and I basically had my pick of runs because I always got them there on time. And when I came back from hurting my back, and they did the same damn thing. Not only that, but they had given away my truck with all my stuff in it, maps, clothes, bedding, sheets and blankets, CB, everything. Giving it away, and I never saw that stuff again. And they gave me this filthy, I want to use bad words to describe it, filthy, filthy truck. And I knew I already saw the writing on the wall. I knew how this was going to go. It wasn't just a filthy truck, but it had leaks, water leaks. It had been in a wreck, and they patched it back together and sent me out there. And I no longer had, I had the worst runs, the lowest paying runs, which required the most amount of work to get done and get empty. So I tell you what, that was a life lesson. Driver of the year 1 year, and a few months later, they're wanting you to leave because you hurt your back. So in reality, looking back, I really owe those two people. They taught me valuable, valuable lessons. And that lesson is, no matter how hard you work, no matter how faithful you are to an employer, no matter how diligently you perform your job and take pride in doing it, it means absolutely nothing to them. If you work 10 years and you're the best employee they ever had, and then you make a mistake on your first day of your 11th year, that 10 years means absolutely nothing to them. Good lesson to learn. On the other hand, that was what made me buy my first truck. And my very first year being an owner-operator, I made 165 grand. And every year after that, I made 200, 225, 230. And it was the best thing they ever done to me, teach me those lessons. So there's my Sunday rant. There's a very long story, 12 minutes. Have a good Sunday, y'all.